impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte has been filed at the lower house this morning, again on grounds of her alleged misuse of confidential funds.
The complainant this time around was represented by the religious sector, non-government organizations or NGOs, and lawyers.
But the question is, will this prosper now that Congress is already in recess? Priests from the Diocese of Novaliches, Order of Carmelites, and the Congregation of Mission, as well as non-government organizations and lawyers, filed a said complaint in Congress. This was immediately endorsed by Assistant Minority Leader and Camarines Sur Congressman Gabriel Bordado Jr. and Deputy Minority Leader Lex Anthony Chris Colada. Like the first two impeachment complaints, the main grounds are also culpable violation of the Constitution and betrayal of public trust, still due to the alleged anomalous spending of confidential funds of the agencies under VP Sara. But this time, the complainants argued that ousting the vice president has become a moral obligation.
These priests, these lawyers believe that with what transpired and with what the public saw during the committee hearings, it's no longer just the legal and constitutional obligation of the members of the House of Representatives to impeach and for the Senate to remove from office the sitting Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines. It has now become their moral obligation to do so.
We believe VP Sara committed something illegal and something immoral against the Filipino people. For us, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness.
Let's discuss this development with Attorney Amando Ligutan, representative of the complainants. Welcome to the big story, Attorney.
Good evening, Gretchen, Pauline, and Sean. It's nice to be here. Good evening to everybody.
Attorney, it's been weeks since we've heard that there was a third impeachment complaint coming, and we also do know that we are on a tight timeline. Why did the impeachment complaint get filed only now?
All right. So as to the timing, we only had 1 week to prepare the impeachment complaints. The impeachment complaint is a result of the committee hearings conducted in the House of Representatives. So as to the timing, we just met each other a few days ago. We did it online. And so we had like a tight schedule. So as to the timing, that's the reason why we only met a few days ago. We are a group of individuals from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, bound by the same cause. We found something. When we heard the committee hearings, we decided that there is sufficient ground. There are rather sufficient grounds for the impeachments of the sitting Vice President of the Republic. So as to why it was only now, there's no deadline for that. There's no deadline for that.
Agree. So a lot of people though are saying that maybe if there were only two, then they could have consolidated earlier and therefore it would be better timing-wise, no? But Attorney, what was the rationale behind filing this impeachment? Were you not satisfied with the grounds that were stated in the previous two cases that were filed? Can you tell us the rationale and why get together? How did you guys get together in order to,
All right. So the genius of the Constitution is that it provides and it allows any individual to initiate an impeachment proceedings in the House of Representatives. So as to why there is this third group, that is the gist of democracy. So any Filipino citizen could file a verified complaint for impeachments against any of those impeachable officers. So as to why this group came into being, honestly, we didn't know each other. Mm-hmm. All right? Mm-hmm. So we didn't know each other, but it started with a conversation. Somebody called me up. Of course, I'm not at liberty to tell the public who called me up. But this individual said that there's this group of priests wanting to file an impeachment complaint. All right. So when I received the call, we created a Viber group, and the discussion started there. All right. And people, although we are strangers to each other, but if there's a common thread among us, if there's a commonality between and among us, so it's easy to blend. So it's easy to blend. So we did that. We did that in record time. So we were able to come up with, we believe, a credible impeachment complaints against the vice president. It is the common cause, a cause common among us, that made it possible.
Just one follow-up quickly. I know you're not at liberty to tell us who called you initially to band you all together, but can you at least give us an idea whether this is a private citizen or a lawmaker?
A priest.
Also a priest.
A priest, yes.
Ibig sabihin, hindi po kayo yung pangatlong impeachment complaint na pinag-uusapan matagal na kung 1 week ago lang po kayo nag-usap-usap?
As to that question, I cannot answer that. So as to the speculation that there is this third group, I cannot answer that. But I've heard that this will not end with the third impeachment complaint.
Meron pa.
This will not end. You know the reason for that is because the committee hearings conducted by the House of Representatives, they were public, right? Everybody got to see, everybody got to hear, everybody got to read the documents flashed on TV, right?
But if I'm not,
continue, please.
but if I'm not mistaken, the reports are currently held by the Secretary General. Parang hindi pa niya tinatransmit, ano? So kumbaga hindi pa umaandar yung buong proseso. So baka mas lalong maapektuhan yung practicality, yung realistic timelines of being able to make that happen before the midterm elections and before the campaign start.
So as to the timing, Gretchen, as to whether it's still practicable for Congress to do that, unfortunately, that is beyond me to speculate. But if we were to look at what the Constitution provides, the guidelines, the deadlines, dates, we are still very much on time, Gretchen.
Okay. Well, gets ko naman yung sinasabi nyo na it's not your problem, kumbaga, that's Congress's problem. Basta on your part, nag-file na kayo. But I think this is, and I also want to add to just what Gretchen was saying, because supposedly nga, Secretary General Reginald Velasco said that some House lawmakers have called him now before, this was of course before today, and said na meron pang isa, but gusto pa namin siyang i-endorse, but we're still going to study it. There were some things like that. So, like what you're saying is,
As to whether or not that's yung isa, so I cannot speculate on that.
Okay. But you did hear na there might be, kumbaga, a fourth or possible fifth.
I was busy my livelihood as a lawyer. I didn't hear that, to be honest.
Okay.
Okay, Attorney, well, just like the first two impeachment complaints, the main grounds that you cited were also culpable violation of the Constitution and betrayal of public trust. Did you also heavily rely on the hearings of the House committees?
Yes, the impeachment complaint that we drafted is lifted or it relies heavily on the pieces of evidence, on the facts and or information that became public during the committee hearings. When we were watching these committee hearings, we didn't have in mind the filing of the impeachment complaints. But as we went along watching these hearings, at a certain point, you ask yourself, isn't this too much? Isn't it too much for the office of the vice president and the vice president herself to tell the public that she has nothing to do with these fictitious individuals receiving millions of pesos of public funds? Isn't that too much?
So you're saying...
It was.
Of course, attorney, you are an attorney, so I'm guessing napag-aralan nyo na rin to. Are you confident that that's, by virtue of just everything that went on publicly in the hearings in the House, sapat na yon para ma-impeach ang Vice President?
Okay. So, yes, I have to agree with that. So because, impeachment is a political process. It is for the House of Representatives to determine for themselves whether there is sufficient basis to transmit the articles of impeachment to the Senate. You know, these hearings, they are public hearings. They are not hearings before a tribunal or before a court. But remember, these hearings, the witnesses, the testimonies of these witnesses are done under oath. All right? So, and when we say under oath, we mean that these witnesses, when they testified before the hearings, what they were saying should be actually the truth. All right? So, after watching these hearings, we found out that the office of the vice president dispersed like 125 million pesos in record 11 days. And after that, COA had to issue notices of suspension and notices of disallowances to the office of the vice president because COA found out that there was insufficient accounting of public funds given to the office of the vice president. And what was more shocking was there were individuals who used fictitious names, and there were individuals, the same names but different signatures. And there were activities that, according to the office of the vice president, they did, but in fact, according to the hearings, these activities didn't happen. Surveillance activities, right, didn't happen. The office of the vice president was not able to report properly these activities, right? Also, it was only when COA flagged these disbursements that the office of the vice president came up with what they say acknowledgement receipts. They came up with acknowledgement receipts dated December 2023 for activities that happened a year before. How could that be possible? How could that be possible? You know, it came to a point that we, the members of this third impeachment team, if you may, that I think the office of the vice president, the vice president herself, is not telling the truth.
Attorney, you mentioned a lot about the confidential fund use. So will your impeachment complaint center on that particularly? And what would be the difference of your impeachment complaint from the first two?
All right. So I think the difference would be number one, the grounds that we are citing, a culpable violation of the Constitution. But we go deeper. We also argue, and we can prove it, that in fact the vice president committed plunder. The vice president committed malversation of public funds. The vice president committed technical malversation of public funds. The vice president committed bribery, and all of these are grounds for her impeachment as the sitting vice president of the Republic.
I like how you guys put the word or the term moral obligation, that it has become a moral obligation already. And seeing that this has, a lot of the filers are also from the religious sectors, and possibly, the idea even came from priests or a group of priests. How do you guys plan to, kumbaga, ibang angulo ito, no? This is not politicking, this is the religious sector, yeah. What is the sentiment of the religious sector and everything that is happening today?
Yeah, these priests, they're so busy with their daily schedules, and it's now Simbang season, But, they had to make time for this. They had to make time for this. That's why when we were in the process of crafting the main complaint, it dawned upon me as the lead counsel that this is just no longer a battle for what's legal and what's not. This is no longer a battle of what is constitutional or what's not. It has become a battle of what is right and what is wrong, what is immoral and what is moral. That's why we decided to craft it that way. That's the obligation now of the House of Representatives to impeach the sitting vice presidents and for the Senate to remove from office Vice President Duterte is just no longer their, number one, constitutional or legal obligation. It has become their moral obligation to do so.
And attorney, if for example, nakakulangan ng oras, hindi nakapag-signature campaign, if this fails, right? What is the plan of your group? I'm sure you've discussed it given that you already for sure know na bitin kayo sa oras.
Yeah. So as to what we can do and what we will do after if this fails, to be honest, we're not thinking about that yet. We are not thinking about that yet. We are just thinking of following this through. And I think based on the sentiments on the ground, you know, based on what we saw on TV or what we saw on social media, I think the House of Representative members will ultimately decide to impeach the vice president. It is just too much. The pieces of evidence are just so glaring. They're just so glaring that it will take so much for a sitting member of the House of Representatives to ignore this and to ignore the plea of the people. The people now are clamoring for accountability, right? So I think we are confident with the fact that the House of Representatives will decide on the matter based on conscience.